Tariffs built America. For over a century, tariffs funded 90% of the federal government's revenue. They built roads, canals, ports, and the Navy. They protected American industries from British competition. They made America wealthy and powerful. Then we forgot why we had them. We abolished them. We outsourced manufacturing. And now we're shocked that other nations are outcompeting us. The story of American tariffs is the story of how a nation built itself through economic protection. And what happens when that protection is removed. Welcome to Money Stories, where we uncover the hidden histories of finance and expose the economic decisions that shaped nations. Today, we're exploring how tariffs built America, why they were abolished, and what we lost when we forgot their importance. When the United States was founded in 1789, it was a poor, agricultural nation with minimal manufacturing capacity. Britain was the industrial superpower. British factories produced goods far more efficiently than American craftspeople could. If America allowed free trade with Britain, American manufacturing would be destroyed immediately. American manufacturers couldn't compete with British prices because British factories had invested decades in machinery and accumulated capital. To allow American manufacturing to develop, the government needed to protect it from British competition. Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary, understood this completely. Hamilton argued that tariffs were essential to allow American industries to develop. He called these industries infant industries. They were too weak to compete with established British manufacturers, but had potential to become competitive if protected. A tariff would make British goods expensive, allowing American manufacturers to compete on price. Over time, American manufacturers would accumulate capital, invest in machinery, and become efficient enough to compete internationally. Hamilton's vision was brilliant and deeply understood. Tariffs weren't permanent protections. They were temporary shields that allowed industries to develop until they could compete internationally. Once developed, they could face competition. But until development was complete, protection was essential. This philosophy shaped American economic policy for the entire 19th century. The Morrill Tariff, passed in 1861, implemented this vision on a massive scale. The tariff was passed at the beginning of the Civil War when the federal government desperately needed revenue. The tariff raised import duties from roughly 20% to 40% or higher on manufactured goods. The purpose was both to raise revenue for the war and to protect American manufacturing from British competition. The Morrill Tariff was extraordinarily successful. American manufacturing boomed. Industries that had been marginally competitive suddenly thrived. Iron manufacturers built foundries. Textile manufacturers built mills. Machinery manufacturers built factories. The tariff protected these industries from British competition long enough for them to accumulate capital and become competitive. By the 1890s, American manufacturing had surpassed British manufacturing. America was producing more steel than Britain, more machinery, more manufactured goods. The tariff revenue was substantial. For decades, tariffs provided roughly 40 to 60% of federal government revenue. This revenue funded infrastructure, roads, canals, ports, the Navy. The government could invest in national development without borrowing or imposing income taxes. The tariff was a tax on foreign goods that foreigners effectively paid. Americans benefited from infrastructure development while foreigners bore the cost. The economic philosophy behind the tariff was sophisticated. Adam Smith had argued for free trade, claiming that each nation should specialize in what it produces most efficiently. Britain should produce manufactured goods. America should produce agricultural goods, according to Smith's logic. But Alexander Hamilton understood something Smith missed. Comparative advantage assumes equal starting conditions. Britain had a 200-year head start in manufacturing. Allowing free trade immediately would destroy American manufacturing before it could develop. Hamilton's infant industry argument was far more realistic than Smith's free trade ideology. An industry needs time to develop, to accumulate capital, to invest in machinery and training during that development period. Protection from more developed competitors is essential. Once the industry is developed and can compete internationally, the protection can be removed. But removing protection before development is complete destroys the industry. This is exactly what happened in America in the 20th century. As American manufacturing matured and became competitive, tariff protection was gradually reduced. The Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act of 1934 began the process of tariff reduction. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, established in 1947, committed nations to gradually reducing tariffs. The North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994 essentially eliminated tariffs between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. The reduction of tariffs happened gradually over decades. Americans didn't realize what was being given up. The tariff had protected American manufacturing for so long that Americans forgot it was protection that made American manufacturing possible. When tariffs were reduced, Americans expected American manufacturers to remain competitive. They didn't understand that American manufacturers had only been competitive because of tariff protection. The result was devastating. Once tariff protection was removed, American manufacturing couldn't compete with manufacturers in countries with lower wages. Manufacturing jobs moved overseas. Factories closed. Communities that had been built around manufacturing collapsed. The Rust Belt emerged. Former industrial powerhouses like Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland became economically devastated. Manufacturing employment in America fell from roughly 25% of the workforce in 1970 1970 to roughly 8% by 2020. The deindustrialization of America wasn't inevitable. It was the result of specific policy choices, the decision to reduce tariffs and embrace free trade. Other nations understood the value of tariff protection and didn't make the same choice. Germany maintained tariff protection and kept manufacturing thriving. Japan built manufacturing despite tariffs and maintained industrial capacity. South Korea consciously protected infant industries and developed them into global competitors. China understood the importance of protecting infant industries. When China entered the global economy in the 1980s, it didn't embrace free trade completely. It selectively protected industries, required technology transfer from foreign companies, and maintained tariffs to protect developing manufacturers. Today, China is the world's largest manufacturer. It developed manufacturing capacity while protected, and now it's so competitive that it can thrive even without tariffs. The United States, by contrast, dismantled its tariff protection at the exact moment when it should have been protecting new infant industries. As technology changed, new industries emerged, but the United States didn't protect them. Instead, it allowed manufacturing of computers, electronics, and other high-tech goods to move overseas. Today, the United States barely manufactures anything. It imports manufactured goods from Asia and services its debt with financial services. The tariff debate is fundamentally about whether a nation should protect developing industries or embrace free trade immediately. Free trade is excellent when you're already the most competitive manufacturer in the world. Britain embraced free trade in the 19th century because British manufacturing was already dominant. Free trade allowed Britain to specialize in what it did best. But free trade is devastating when you're trying to develop manufacturing capacity. You need protection to allow infant industries to develop. The irony is that the nations that developed the most thriving manufacturing sectors were those that used tariff protection. America developed manufacturing with tariff protection. Germany developed with tariff protection. Japan developed with tariff protection. South Korea developed with tariff protection. China developed with tariff protection. Every successful manufacturing nation used tariff protection to develop. Then once developed, they could compete internationally. The United States abandoned this proven strategy in the latter 20th century. The result is that America lost manufacturing capacity, lost manufacturing jobs, lost the ability to produce goods domestically. The country became dependent on imports. The trade deficit exploded. America imports far more than it exports. Every year, the deficit is hundreds of billions of dollars. The loss of manufacturing had broader consequences. Manufacturing jobs paid well. They provided middle-class incomes to workers without college degrees. With the loss of manufacturing, working-class Americans lost access to middle-class income. The middle class contracted. Income inequality increased. Communities that depended on manufacturing collapsed. Social cohesion deteriorated. The political consequences have been profound. Workers in former manufacturing regions became angry at the loss of jobs and economic opportunity. This anger fueled political movements, both left-wing movements demanding protection of workers and right-wing movements demanding immigration restrictions and tariff protection. The election of Donald Trump in 2016 was partly a response to the loss of manufacturing jobs and economic opportunity. Now, in 2024 and beyond, tariffs are being discussed again. Some policymakers are advocating for tariff protection to rebuild American manufacturing. They argue that tariffs protected American industry successfully in the past and could do so again. Other policymakers argue that tariffs are economically inefficient and that America should embrace free trade. The historical evidence is clear. Tariffs were essential to developing American manufacturing. They worked. America became the world's largest manufacturer with tariff protection. But tariffs alone aren't sufficient. A nation needs more than tariffs. It needs investment in education, in infrastructure, in research and development. It needs a long-term commitment to developing manufacturing capacity. That's the story of how tariffs built America, and what happened when we forgot why we had them. If you found this exploration of economic history and policy compelling, subscribe to Money Stories for more uncovered truths about the systems that shaped our world. Leave a comment below. Do you think the United States should implement tariffs to rebuild manufacturing, or should it embrace free trade? Thanks for watching Money Stories, and I'll see you in the next episode.